Ancient Greece. A figure stands in the place where sunlight filters through pine trees at a shaded intersection of hills. He is a young Hercules, not yet the legendary hero whose name will echo through millennia, but a confused young man at a literal and metaphorical crossroads. Two goddesses appear before him. One is radiant and alluring. She promises pleasure and easy rewards. The other, equally beautiful but dressed more simply, offers something deeper: the four cardinal virtues of justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom. There is nothing easy about her path, she warns, and walking it will take real work. This choice reflects a profound Stoic truth. As Aristotle observed, we become builders by building, and we become harpists by playing the harp. Similarly, then, we become just by doing just actions, temperate by doing temperate actions, brave by doing brave actions. Wisdom, the Stoic virtue which forms this summary's focus, isn't granted. It's earned through practice and reflection. Once attained, it becomes the virtue that guides all others, helping us navigate life's countless crossroads with clarity. So, are you ready to tread your own difficult path toward wisdom? Then let's begin. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that the end of being is to know, and if you say the end of knowledge is action, why, yes, but the end of that action is knowledge again. This cycle captures the essence of wisdom. It is the virtue that transforms knowledge into right action and action back into deeper understanding. The Stoics identified four cardinal virtues: justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom, but they deemed wisdom the mother of the other three virtues. After all, without wisdom to recognize that you're acting courageously, can you truly have courage? Without wisdom to discern what's just, how can you practice justice? Wisdom illuminates the path for every other virtue. But what exactly is wisdom? It's surprisingly difficult to define. It encompasses intelligence, sensibility, intuition, experience, education, philosophy, practical understanding, wit, and perspective. Yet it's also more than all these combined. Perhaps the clearest definition is this: wisdom is knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to go about it. As hard as wisdom is to describe, it's equally hard to attain. In fact, it's unattainable in the absolute sense, because while you can grow wise, you can always grow wiser. Wisdom is a learned skill. No one is born innately wise. Equally, no one is born foolish, ignorant perhaps, but remaining unwise is a choice. Think of wisdom and foolishness as an asymptote, a mathematical curve that constantly approaches but never quite reaches a fixed line. We're all positioned somewhere along that axis, some closer to wisdom, others further away. But because the function extends infinitely in both directions, the possibilities for growth remain limitless. Is then this unquantifiable and ever unattainable virtue actually worth pursuing? Well, yes, because life demands it. Sooner or later, you'll face a crucial choice: a moral dilemma, a complex problem, a confusing relationship, or a hidden opportunity. In those moments, wisdom either shows up or it doesn't. The more you work to earn it, the more wisdom will reward you. The Roman philosopher Seneca once observed that no man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom doesn't simply happen to us. It's cultivated deliberately, through sustained effort and attention. On the journey to becoming wiser, then, it helps to study history's wisest minds. People who became wise not through fortunate accidents, but through deliberate work. For now, let's focus on Michel de Montaigne, the 16th century French nobleman whose path to wisdom began with a radical experiment. Though born into aristocratic privilege, his parents made an unusual decision. They sent their infant son to live among peasants in a poor village for his first years of life. Why? They wanted him to understand that nobility wasn't inherent, that underneath titles and wealth, all humans share the same fundamental nature. From these unconventional beginnings, Montaigne lived an unconventional life. He served as magistrate, moved in the circles of the French court, and seemed destined for the typical path of a Renaissance nobleman. Then came the accident. Thrown violently from his horse, Montaigne lay seemingly dead, only to wake hours later having glimpsed the edge of mortality. This brush with death catalyzed everything that followed. Montaigne remembered the words of Roman emperor and Stoic Marcus Aurelius. Imagine you have died. Now take the rest of your life and live it properly. At 38, determined to live properly, he retreated to his chateau's library tower. He read voraciously. He carved the tower's ceiling beams with philosophical inscriptions, including Epictetus's insight. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Surrounded by the books and words of inspirational thinkers, Montaigne began what would become his life's work, the essays. He wrote about everything: friendship, death, cannibals, thumbs, the education of children, but always he wrote as himself, never pretending to omniscience. "What do I know?" became his motto. It wasn't a despairing refrain, rather a recognition that certainty is often arrogance in disguise. Montaigne didn't completely withdraw from public life. No truly wise person can. He served as mayor of Bordeaux during vicious religious wars, negotiating between Catholics and Protestants when both sides demanded absolute allegiance. His wisdom showed itself in nuance, in recognizing that most people, whatever their beliefs, share common hopes and fears. What can we learn from Montaigne? That education never ends. He read constantly, questioned everything, and remained a student of life until his death. Wisdom, Montaigne knew, isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. In ancient Sparta, young warriors underwent the agoge, a rigorous training system that forged soldiers through hardship and immersive practice. For the Stoics, who valued wisdom above all, life itself was the agoge. If wisdom is the work of lifelong learning, then anywhere can become your training ground. These days, Monet's water lilies draw throngs of tourists to Paris every year. But once upon a time, Claude Monet was a precocious young artist with a distaste for traditional education. His parents offered to send him to the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts, but Monet hated the idea of being trapped indoors. He loved being outside, running along cliffs, walking through fields, and painting landscapes in natural light. He skipped the safe path that art school offered and instead joined the military. Stationed in Algeria, what might have seemed like an interruption to his artistic trajectory became the foundation of his career. Outdoors constantly, trekking under harsh sunlight, Monet had found his ideal classroom. He was learning how to see. Monet said, "The impressions of light and color I received there were not to classify themselves until later." But they did, indeed, classify themselves. In fact, they became the basis for Impressionism, the revolutionary artistic movement centered on capturing light and color, of which Monet was a founder. This is the key to wisdom. Find the classroom that works for you and take ownership of your education. Because an education isn't something you get, it's something you make. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius received Rome's finest education, yet his real wisdom came from ruling an empire through plague and war. Epictetus was born a slave, denied all formal education, yet became one of philosophy's greatest teachers because suffering itself had been his classroom. So ask yourself, where's your classroom? Perhaps it's a job others dismiss, travel that immerses you in unfamiliar places, parenthood, or a hobby pursued with devotion. Don't worry if it doesn't look traditional. While your choice might meet resistance, it also brings freedom and the ability to learn what you actually need. Your agoge is wherever you choose to learn. Choose it wisely and commit to it completely. Empathy might be the most misunderstood component of wisdom. Some dismiss it as weakness, as soft sentiment that clouds judgment. But the Stoics knew better. True empathy isn't about agreeing with everyone. It's about understanding them, having the ability to step outside your own experience and perceive the world as another does. Without this capacity, wisdom remains incomplete. There's a German word, Umwelt, that means one's sense of the world, the unique way each being perceives and experiences reality. Every lived experience is different, whether subtly or vastly. One person who understood how crucial it is to project into the Umwelt of others was Temple Grandin, animal scientist and autism advocate. Grandin's revolutionary livestock handling systems now process nearly half of all cattle in North America. Grandin, who is autistic, perceived the world differently to neurotypical people. Understanding how experience is shaped by perception, she went to radical lengths to understand how animals perceive their world. She would literally get down on her hands and knees with a camera, moving through cattle chutes at cow-eye level, seeing what they saw. Shadows that looked like chasms, threatening-looking chains, panic-inducing reflections. I was the first person to notice that the cattle were afraid of little things we tend not to notice, Grandin observed. But perhaps it would be more accurate to say she was the first person who truly cared about them. Empathy in action. This ability to enter another's Umwelt isn't just useful for understanding animals or individuals. It's essential for navigating human conflict and social change. The wise person doesn't mistake their own perspective for universal truth. Instead, they recognize that beneath every disagreement, every seemingly irrational behavior, lies a coherent internal logic shaped by unique experiences and perceptions. Remember Montaigne's library tower, its ceiling beams carved with philosophical inscriptions? Among the quotes was this stark warning from Paul's letter to the Corinthians: "If any man thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know." What's the lesson? Humility. If years of study don't humble you, they've taught you nothing. History's worst calamities stem from catastrophic certainty. In 415 BC, Athens sent a massive fleet to conquer Syracuse. So confident of victory, they ignored every warning. The expedition ended in annihilating defeat. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia with supreme assurance the campaign would be swift. He limped home having lost nearly 500,000 men. In 2003, the Bush administration launched the Iraq War convinced they understood exactly what would follow. The result was decades of chaos. What united these disasters? Leaders drunk on their own supposed wisdom, so certain they were right that they couldn't perceive their vast ignorance. True wisdom requires perpetual self-examination, willingness to learn from failure, and wariness of confidence. The prudent person moves carefully precisely because they understand how little they know. But not knowing isn't just about avoiding catastrophe. It can be genuinely joyful. The poet John Keats coined a phrase, negative capability, being capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Great art has the wisdom not to resolve everything neatly. Shakespeare never tells us definitively whether Hamlet's ghost is real, whether Hamlet himself is mad or performing madness. These ambiguities aren't flaws. They're what makes the play a masterpiece. Another writer, F. Scott Fitzgerald, wrote that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Eastern philosophers understood this particularly well. Confucius told his student Ran Chu that wisdom required patience. Wait, reflect, don't rush. He told another student, Zilu, the opposite. Stop overthinking and act decisively. A third student pointed out the contradiction. On the contrary, Confucius said, Ran Chu is overzealous and needs restraint. Zilu is too cautious and needs encouragement to act. This is genuine wisdom, flexible, responsive, attuned to context rather than confined to rigid principles. The wise person knows what they don't know, finds joy in mystery, and stays humble enough to keep learning, even when that means contradicting themselves. The great basketball coach George Raveling has an unusual morning routine. He sits up in bed and tells himself, George, you can either be happy or you can be really happy. Happiness, Raveling understands, is a choice. But why are we talking about happiness? Isn't this a guide to gaining wisdom? Here's the connection. Aristotle's word for happiness was eudaimonia. Eudaimonia doesn't describe fleeting pleasure, but the deepest expression of human flourishing. And it came directly from wisdom. Wisdom produces happiness, he wrote, not in the way that medical science produces health, but in the way health produces health. Medical science treats from outside, but health produces health internally, naturally sustaining itself. Similarly, wisdom doesn't bring happiness as some external reward. Wisdom is happiness. To be clear, we're not talking about conditional happiness of the I'll be happy when I get promoted, find the right partner, lose 20 pounds variety. That happiness is fragile, hostage to circumstances beyond our control. Stoic happiness is different and more radical. The Stoics divided all of existence into two categories, what we control and what we don't. We don't control whether we get the promotion, whether others love us, or whether disaster strikes. We do control our judgments, our responses, our character. What's more, the Stoics believe that everything we don't control is in the deepest sense indifferent to our happiness. Wealth, health, reputation, even life itself. None of these can make you happy or unhappy. Only your wisdom about them can. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire while plague ravaged Rome and barbarians pressed the borders, wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This isn't denial. It's locating happiness where it can't be taken from you. Peace, contentment, happiness. These aren't things the world grants or revokes. They're things you give yourself through wisdom. The path to wisdom and the path to happiness aren't separate. They're the same road.